So this book, it had so many similarities with Islam and our spiritual path in Islam of trying to achieve excellence. And so I then immediately after hearing the podcast, I went and bought the book. And I read the book, I actually listened to it. Unfortunately, I don't have as much time as I used to sit down and read like I used to. So in the very least, I tried listening to the book. And subhanAllah, so many things resonated not only with me, but resonated with Islam. And so my goal tonight is for us to go through this book, inshallah, in its summary, to take some principles of it that we have in Islam, and to find a way to find some correlation and some benefits as to how or what is essentialism and how it's beneficial to us as Muslims. So just starting from the top, what is essentialism? Essentialism is the basic value or principle that only once you give yourself permission to stop and try to do all things, to stop saying yes to everything, can make your highest contribution toward things that really matter. And then he continues on to say, essentialism is not about how to get more things done, it's about how to get the right things done. It doesn't mean just doing less for the sake of less either. It's about making the wisest possible investment of your I think I messed up on the typo, but by doing only what is essential. So as Muslims, the purpose of our entire creation, it really can be essentialized. It can be drilled down to achieving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure. And if we are to drill things down like that, then everything else can be built based off of that. Everything else can be summarized and looked through this very essentialist or very reductionist way. Now, how we make this into our lives practically is the work that we're trying to do. But the goal is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to earn His pleasure. Now, that's not easy. That requires work. And so, really the summary of all of this can be summarized in my favorite hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ, he said that al-mu'min al-qawi khayran wa ahabbi ilallahi min al-mu'min al-da'if wa fi kullin khayr. That the strong believer is better and more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than the weak believer, but there's good in each one. The Prophet ﷺ continued on to say, what is the shahid, the most important part for what we're talking about tonight, ihris ala ma yanfa'ak wasta'in billah wa la ta'jaz. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, be diligent in those things that benefit you. Seek the aid of Allah and do not tire. ولا تقل لو كان لي كذا أو كان لي كذا أو كذا ولكن لو يفتح عمل الشيطان. And if something befalls it, don't say, if only I had done this or only I had done that. Rather say that this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed for it to happen. And that the if opens for the door of shaitan. And so this hadith is really, can be summarized into six different things. One, which is most important, that there's goodness inherently in every single one of us. But more importantly, that goodness has a purpose in Allah's eyes. Why we're even trying to be good, why we're trying to achieve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure, has a purpose. We're not just living our lives aimlessly. We're not just trying to do this goodness for the hopes or not really understanding why, but actually doing goodness has a benefit. Doing goodness is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. So it has a purpose to Allah. And obviously eyes, we're talking what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees. We're not talking about physical eyes and like how we have. And then two, there's goodness in every single one of us. That each and every one of us inherently has goodness. The Prophet ﷺ said, وَفِي كُلٍّ خَيْرٍ. And so we shouldn't start to think that maybe someone else is better than I am. Or that, oh, it's because of them I'm not going to be able to achieve this. Or that person, that's not how we're supposed to look at things as Muslims. There's goodness in each and every one of us. What differentiates us as a community, or as individuals rather, is what we do with what we've been given. How we take our lives and then turn it into something meaningful. How we take our lives and make it something that actually is worthy and of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure and worthy of closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then most importantly, we have to focus on actually what is beneficial to us. There are many things that will come in our path, many things that we'll come in contact with, and we'll be bombarded with many, many different things. But Prophet ﷺ told us, ihris ala ma yanfa'uk. Be diligent, focus, go hard, have zeal in those things that are actually going to benefit you. Again, everything else is noise. And this goes back to the prime principle of essentialism. But reducing life to that which is beneficial is not sufficient. This has to be grounded in a theological basis. As the Prophet ﷺ said, وَاسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ. Waw al-atf. These two have to go hand in hand. Our diligence and focus on the things that are beneficial to us, along with understanding that this doesn't happen except through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these two things, you don't do one without the other. We don't think that we as human beings have the ability to do something particularly special. It's only through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy and His blessings that we're able to achieve any and everything. As I mentioned in the khutbah, I think last week, as human beings, inherently, things are limited. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, things are infinite. And that's how we have to understand that our diligence is predicated on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala benefiting us. But then the Prophet ﷺ said, وَلَا تَعْجَزْ. And do not tire. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to come without difficulty or without work. The Prophet ﷺ is laying the foundations on how we should live our lives. First, focusing on what's important. Two, or hand in hand with that, is orienting ourselves in a state of God consciousness and understanding this doesn't come except via Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And four, this comes through Allah's aid. Five, we can't tire. But last, we can't make excuses. Oh, if I had done this. The Prophet ﷺ literally said that. If I had done this, it would have been that. Or if that would have happened. That's not really beneficial in the grand scheme of things. That's not going to aid us in doing what we're supposed to be doing. It's not going to aid our mission in focusing on achieving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure. All that is excuses. What's really important is figuring out what can I learn from this negative situation and conversely, this positive situation. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inherently put in each and every single thing a lesson for us. We have to then search within ourselves through humility and through God consciousness to find what that lesson is so that we can reap some reward from it. Because if we don't, then we're just really making excuses. So this is this is where I'm coming from with this book. Through this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that we have to be diligent in those things that are beneficial to us. And this book, inshallah, is just a tool out of many, many different tools to sort of reduce that down to an action items, to go back to what is actually beneficial. So the book is broken down into four main principles, four main subjects. Finding the essence. What is the core mindset of essentialism? Exploring how we can discern the trivial many from the vital few. Eliminating how we can cut out the trivial many. And then executing on how we can make doing vital things almost effortlessly or effortless. This is all it's about. Reducing, figuring out what our purpose is, or figuring out what we actually want to do. Then exploring to see how we're going to achieve that. Eliminating everything else in the exploration process, and then go executing on that. And under them, I don't know if this laser pointer works, but you can't see on TV, wonderful. Under those four main things are the different chapters of the book. And I'm going to take a little bit of each chapter, inshallah, to sort of see how we can do that. So we have, as human beings, inherently the ability to choose whatever we want. We have the ability, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the ability to choose between one thing or another. But the reality is, in today's life, we have an infinite ability to choose between different things. As you'll find today, we have first world problems. I have so many different options that I don't end up actually doing anything. And this is something that we see in our youth today. They have a sense of learned helplessness, which the author talks about. They almost, because of the ability to choose or not figuring out how to do that, there's a failure to launch. There's a lack of ability to go forward because of so many choices. And what this is trying to depict is that we're trying to reduce things from all the chaos and all the noise to choose actually something that not only is going to benefit us as Muslims, but something we're passionate about. When the Prophet ﷺ is telling us be diligent in what's beneficial to us, That doesn't mean that we just have to do the hard thing that we don't like. La, 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 la. That's not what it's about. We have to find out what's actually good for us, what is going to be easy to us, what we're inclined to doing, things that we'll naturally want to do, and then do that. And this is why in Islam, the Prophet ﷺ, he talks about how there are 8 different doors to Jannah, and we have the ability to choose the one that we want to enter into. And so now we have to figure out, through this process of choice, what are the options that I have and where I am in life, and then which ones are even important. And spiritually this is important, not just from a worldly perspective, because I'm trying to balance between the two. From a worldly perspective, it's choices, whether it's career or spousal choice, or what I'm going to eat and how I'm going to eat, sleep, which will come through later in the book. We have countless choices. But also spiritually, what is actually going to benefit me? What is it that I'm going to focus on? Perhaps I'm inclined to fasting every Monday and Thursday. That is something that's easy for me, so I'm going to do that. Perhaps I'm going to pray at nighttime. I sleep light anyways, I don't need much sleep, or I'm accustomed to waking up, so I'm going to try to pray at nighttime. Perhaps it's I'm going to be incredibly generous, giving any and everything that I have, so that I can be like Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma and just give. We have to figure out spiritually how we're going to do that and what we're going to do. But there has to be a balance, so that this circle that we're trying to get to is not one-sided. It's not only about the secular things that we're trying to do, what we're eating, what we're doing for careers, what we're studying in school, who we're going to marry, but also it has some purpose and some meaning to it. There's a balance on the spiritual side. Because as Muslims we know that our ticket to Jannah, that thing that we're trying to do, is worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So once we figure out what we're actually going to choose, we then have to discern actually what we're going to do. So most of what exists in the universe, our actions, and this is not a Muslim by the way, most of what exists in the universe, our actions, and all of the forces, resources, and ideas, has little value and yields little result. On the other hand, a few things work fantastically well and have tremendous impact. So there are a bunch of things that we can do. Each and every one of us can do a bunch of different things, but by figuring out what the small things that I'm going to do, that's what's really going to make the most impact. And actually, as we see in this picture, it will only distract us. If we're trying to do 20 different things, then our energy now is spread in about many different things. But if we figure out what our purpose is, what I want to do, then now we can channel all of that on one thing. Now we can go and focus on that. And that requires a lot of humility. That requires a lot of muhasabah, really taking ourselves into account and exploring what I've done and what I want to do with my life. And that also requires, I think I just mentioned that, humility, muhasabah, but also humility. It requires that we really not only do the muhasabah, but we're real with ourselves. What do I actually have the capacity to do? If I want to be an intellectual and I don't have the capacity to understand the key things, that's fine. Not everyone's meant to do that. But we have to have the humility to figure that out. Equally speaking, perhaps construction isn't for me, or working with my hands, I don't have the ability to do that. But I have the ability to be an engineer, or to be a doctor, or whatever the case may be. So we have to figure out, not trying to do 20 different things. I don't want to be an imam, a photographer, a biker, and all these different things that I enjoy doing. I enjoy photography, I enjoy riding motorcycles, I enjoy doing a bunch of different things. But all of that becomes noise. It becomes a waste of my own personal resources if that's not actually what's going to be the most important thing to me. Because now I'm trying to split my time between the imam work. I'm trying to split my time between, on the side, now go indulge in photography on the side. And then I'm going to try to commute using a motor. It just won't, it doesn't work for me. I found through living this short life that I've lived so far, by spreading myself like that, then my attention gets spread as well. And so we have to realize what is important to us, and then what we're actually going to focus on. And inherently in doing this, there are trade-offs that we're going to make. when we're trying to discern what's important to us, that means that we're not going to be able to do everything. That means that some things are going to have to be put in the back burner, which is not easy. Trade-offs are real, as the author mentions. Trade-offs are real, both in our personal and our professional lives. And until we accept the reality that we're doomed to be just like Continental, so he brings the example of Continental Airlines. They tried to do so much, but really weren't able to, stuck in the straddled strategy that forces us to make sacrifices on the margins by default, and we might not have made by design. We now have to figure out what is actually important. And by then, first choosing what's important, discerning that from what's not, and then making that trade-off, certain things we just can't do, which may be difficult. But we can try to avoid the realities of trade-offs, but we can't escape them. And this is very, very real, again, for us, first world problems. We want to try to balance the most extreme things. But what Islam is trying to teach us, and that what we're trying to highlight via this book as a tool to achieve that, is that we're trying to be a ummah of the middle. We're trying to be a nation that finds a balance in all of these things and focuses on what's most important. Because jumping between those extremes is incredibly difficult to navigate. So he says an essentialist sees the trade-offs as inherent parts of life, not as an inherently negative part of life. Instead of asking, what do I have to give up, they ask, what do I want to go big on? The cumulative impact of this small challenge to think about what can be profound. And so this is what we're trying to do. Not to think on the negative, because it's very easy to be pessimistic. It's very easy for me to say, oh my God, if I do this, then I won't be able to do that. I'm going to give up on all these things. But we have to think about really, going back to the last picture that we had, what I'm going to focus my energy on and go really hard with that. وَلَا تَعْجَزْ, as the Prophet ﷺ said. And don't tire. Go hard on that one thing. But again, we have to discern and then figure out what trade-offs we're going to make in that process. So once we've figured out what we're going to do and how we're doing it, the next key part of the book, after figuring out what the essence of what we're doing is, we then have to explore. And this is something that many of us, younger people, millennials particularly, and those younger, we've sort of lost that. Either we get lost in exploration by itself, or we forget that we actually have to explore. That exploration comes with mentorship. It comes with mastery. It comes with trying different things and finding a niche. And again, failure to launch is just exploring and without end, without really putting any guidelines on when I'm going to figure out an end to this. Or, again, that I just don't explore and I give up. Because this is incredibly difficult, it looks overwhelming in the horizon, I'm just not even going to try, and I'm just going to really limit myself to this. Again, balance. Islam is asking us and trying to get us to balance between these two extremes. And in exploration, some things that the author mentions that we need to do are one, escape, look, play, sleep, and select. The first escape are the perks of being unavailable. And this is a very Islamic concept, khalwa. Taking time to just be removed of everything. That there's actually data that proves that in order for us to be creative, it requires time of nothingness. It requires time when our brain is not really distracted by a bunch of different things. And that's what we've lost because we no longer want to be bored. Because we no longer want to be bored, we are really uncomfortable with this state of boredom. We then lose the ability to have creative thought and exploration and escaping in the wondrous realm of our minds and figuring out how we can make this. So for us as Muslims, Islam already gives us that with khalwa. Our scholars went on ritual retreats. What do we do in the last 10 nights of Ramadan? I'tikaf. Some of us try to spend I'm not one of them, not saying me being that, but this is part of Islam, by going to the masjid and devoting 10 days to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or whatever we can of that time. It's already part of the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. From us, maybe we can't do that. Let's be real. We got jobs, we have families. It may not be possible for us to escape in that nature. Maybe we can close our computers for an hour or two. Maybe we can put our cell phones on do not disturb so we can have a true time of flow. We can just focus on one thing. Instead of multitasking, let's go back into monotasking, getting to one thing and figuring out how we can spend some time on this one thing. I was with a professor on Tuesday, and we were talking about writing, academic writing. And so I was like, how do you do it? Because I've never written anything that needed to be submitted. And she told me, I free write every morning. I said, what's free writing? She said, I spend at least an hour trying to get 500 words on a sheet of paper. And this is not to be seen by anyone. I spend that time, sometimes starting off, I'm tired this morning, I don't really want to do this. But by doing that, it allows her to then, after figuring out how she feels, almost like journaling, but getting down to the nitty-gritty of what I'm actually trying to write about. Monotasking, removing the distractions, and really escaping in the wondrous halls and realm of our mind. Just really getting away from things. And this is essential to what we're trying to do. If as human beings we're trying to achieve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure, if as human beings we're trying to orient our lives in a way that is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we're trying to discern and choose and figure out these trade-offs, that means that sometimes we need to really unplug. We need to get out and re-evaluate what's going on. Am I on that path? Am I not on that path? Have I deviated? Where am I strong? Am I weak? What do I need to do? Do I need mentorship? Do I need advisors? What is going on? And where is my connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with regard to where I'm living and how I'm living? But the next thing that the author mentions, we have to look. We have to see what really matters. And this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala constantly mentions in the Quran. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Do they not ponder and reflect on the Quran? أَفَلَا يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Do they not think? Tadabbur and tafakkur, reflection. I think Siri is trying to give the lecture night. Through this reflection and through this thinking, we then now start to find things out about ourselves. We start to discern okay, I figured out what I'm going to focus on, but what's the path that I'm going to take? How does this look? Where do I figure out what's actually good for us? But then after that, play. Now, I didn't erase this chapter for a very important reason. Because we need to understand inherently what amount of social interactions we need. There's a certain quotance rather, of how much interaction and free time I need as a person. And if I don't do that, then I'm going to be unbalanced once again. And for everyone, that's different. And as life continues, perhaps that will change. When I was an undergrad, I needed to spend about 80% of my time with other people, and now I want to spend about 20% with other people. My lifestyle has changed, but that's fine. But if we don't have time for things that we actually enjoy, then with that, there becomes an imbalance. There becomes something unsettled with us. And this is why Sheikh Yasser always mentions that we have sa'atun fi sa'a. We have certain times that we do this and sometimes we do that. We have stories of the Prophet ﷺ running and racing with Aisha radiallahu anha, easing her disposition because they were on a war expedition. They were going to go into a battle, but he engaged with his wife to sort of ease the distress of what's going on. And sometimes that may mean, again, khalwa, that may mean we have to go away. Whether it's mindfulness meditation, putting our phone on silent, whatever it may be, we have to figure out what that is. But there doesn't always have to be a sense of seriousness and sticking very, very hard to what it is. The Prophet ﷺ was of the most jovial of people. He was someone who was incredibly happy and joyous and loving and caring to everyone. So we have to put that in there. Also, sleep. Now, I'm not going to stress it as much as it's done in the book, but the reality is we have to, as he subtitles this, we have to protect the asset. If I'm not functioning at my capacity, we could put with this eat as well. And I'm the first one, I admit I'm not eating the best, so I'm not judging anyone here. But eating and sleeping with this, as some of our scholars mention, this is the gateway to other things, specifically with eating. But by doing these things with the proper intentionality, understanding that I'm sleeping so that I have energy to carry out my day, understanding that I'm sleeping so that I have now the ability to be fully aware and present when I'm sitting with people and what I'm focusing on. If we're not getting what we truly need as far as sleep goes, maybe we don't need 8, we need 4. Perhaps we need 10. But if I'm not getting what I need, then I'm going to be functioning at a subpar level. And so this is why it's incredibly important that we aren't burning ourselves out. If we're constantly feeding ourselves bad food, if we're constantly working off an insufficient amount of sleep, then really we're almost like hyperclocking our car. It's wonderful, if you're into automotive world, if you like cars, going fast is the goal. We're going to say in regard to like legal racing. They put a supercharger on the car. They put something that makes the engine run hotter. It makes it run faster so that it can run harder and go faster. They put a turbocharger, a supercharger, or as everyone has seen Fast and Furious, there's NOS. You push the button, it goes harder. But if you haven't done that properly, if it's not rigged, then it could blow the engine. Also, it also puts extra wear and tear on the engine. Don't do that. Can someone hit the laptop? If it's not the TV, it's laptop. So with our bodies, if we're not getting enough sleep, then it's going to bite us in the butt sometime or another. And speaking to the young professional in the room, or the college students, this happens every semester at test time. We cram for exams. Wallahi, I remember when I was an undergrad in Saudi, I crammed for exams so hard. I knew the stuff. That when the teacher was saying, the way the test was, it wasn't like he didn't give us papers, he dictated to us the questions. I fell asleep between like 2 and 4. I missed the whole 2 parts of the exam. There's only 5 different questions, period. So again, it came to bite me in the butt because I didn't get adequate sleep. So instead of preparing and taking care of our assets, preparing ourselves by figuring out what's important, figuring out how much sleep we need to take care of that. And then we need to be selective. We have to have an extreme criteria, figuring out actually what it is that I want to choose and how I'm going to engage in that. So talking about selecting, the author mentions, if it isn't a clear yes, then it's a clear no. And the Prophet ﷺ told us this 1400 years ago, إِنَ الْحَلَالُ بَيِّنْ وَالْحَرَامُ بَيِّنْ. That the halal is clear, the permissible is clear, and the haram is clear. The impermissible is clear. وَبَيْنَهُمَا أُمُورٌ مُشْتَبِهَاتٌ لَا يَعْلَمُهُنَّ كَثِيرٌ مِنَ النَّاسِ. And in between them, there are doubtful matters that most people don't know. فَمَنْ وَقَعَ فِي الشُّبُهَاتِ وَقَعَ فِي الْحَرَامِ. Whoever falls into doubtful matters, they fall into haram. While this is usually applied to fiqh, and this is applied to jurisprudence and law, it can also be applied to how and which and what we're going to choose in our lives. Because if we're not focusing on what's really important, then it's wasting. We have the ability to focus. Whether it's ibadats, whether it's school, let's focus on what that is. And so he then continues on to mention, being selective when deciding what opportunities to go after is one thing. But it can get even harder when opportunities come to us. We get a job offer we didn't expect. A side project comes along that isn't really what we do, but it's easy cash. Someone asks us to help out with something we love doing, but it's unpaid work. An acquaintance has a timeshare available, and it has less than ideal location, but at a discounted rate. What do we do? The fear of missing out goes into full effect. How can we say no? The offer is right here, and it's taking, but we might never have gone after it. But now it is easy to get it, we consider it. But if we just say yes, because it's an easy reward, we run into the risk of having to later say no to a more meaningful one. And the fear of missing out, FOMO, is highlighted here because this now is plaguing us as a community. I have so many different choices. and everything looks so wonderful that I'm fearful that if I engage in this, I won't have that. But going back to the last thing, we have to have a very specific criteria in what we're choosing. Because if what we're doing is principled, then that choice becomes much easier. If what we're doing has a very intentional purpose, then the other things, while we may have fear of missing out, is not as serious as it was before. And this goes back to us inherently as human beings being ungrateful. We are inherently as human beings ungrateful. The Prophet ﷺ said that if we were to give the children of Adam a mountain's weight, the size of Uhud of gold, they'd ask for another one. We inherently as human beings want it all. We want to take it all. But now we have to sort of contain those urges, contain and control, restricting our desires in every single thing, so that we then have the ability with ease to choose in what's most important. A very practical example of that is the fact that as human beings, we inherently have physical desires. Islam gave us a permissible outlet for that, marriage. Outside of marriage is impermissible. And because it's a cultural and big thing in Islam, it's easy for us to say haram. Inshallah, for most of us, may Allah protect us and our families. It's easy for us to say, no, I'm not doing that, to cut that off. So controlling that very visceral urge to relieve this desire, we then are able to, because of weighing the pros and cons, and it's very principled. That same intentionality has to be applied to other desires we have. Whether it be physical desires, I want to eat all the time, late at night, maybe I have to restrain that. Or it be intellectual, philosophical desires. I think I should be able to do this, so I want to do that. Or I'm fearful that I will miss out on this if I don't do that, so now I can't choose what it is. We have to become intentional and purposeful in what we're actually doing. Once we do that, we have to eliminate everything else. The author mentions, in other words, it's not enough to simply determine which activities and efforts don't make the best possible contribution. You still have to actively eliminate those that don't. And so he mentions this beautiful diagram of finding the essential intent. Again, we can apply this to our lives spiritually as well. What's concrete and inspirational is having an essential intent. What I'm doing is drilled down and then building off of that. How we can take everything else and figuring it out. If we're keeping things very general without making them concrete, but it's inspirational, we have a general vision, a mission in life. I want to go to Jannah. I want to go to paradise, keeping it vague. I want to be a good Muslim. I want to achieve Allah's pleasure. That's very general. Now, how I go about doing that and what my mission in life is going to be, it's going to be service. It's going to be donating. It's going to be praying. It's going to be fasting. We're still in a very vague and ambiguous general realm. But then we can make it even more general by just saying, I have values. I have values, but Lord knows where those values are going to take me to. I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to steal, I'm not going to cheat. Where that's going is non-existent. Maybe I'll do something concrete with my values and do some muhasabah here and there. I'm going to hold myself to account. I'm going to have a quarterly objective. I'm going to say, for khalas, I'm going to try to do this. What we need to try to do is get down to having an essential intent in what we're trying to do. And this goes back to these 5 things that the author mentions. We have to clarify, really figure it out. We chose what it was, where we're trying to bring it down to what's more and more finite. We chose, we discerned, we realized we had trade-offs. After that, we explored our different options via khalwa and all these different things. Now I need to clarify exactly what it is. Whether that's in writing, whether it's intellectually, whether we sometimes use exterior motivation, we tell our friends and family, hey, I'm doing this. An example of that is, and that has profound impact on us, is that we verbalize it. Hey man, I'm about this right here. This is what I want to do in life. I'm going to do this. And by doing that, just really owning up to it, by saying it to someone that we care about, puts societal pressure on us. So not only do we have the internal pressure, but now we have the exterior pressure. I wanted to apply for a PhD program last semester. Knew I didn't have the qualifications, knew it was going to be incredibly hard. I'm going to apply. So I told any and everyone, I'm applying to a PhD program. So when application date time came, oh my goodness, I got to make sure I finish this application and I get all my recommendations in, because if I don't, I have that societal pressure. We have to clarify what it exactly is it was going to be. And then we have to dare. And by dare, the author is talking about daring to say no. That's not easy and requires courage. It requires grace. It requires us going against sometimes the norms. It requires us going against what other people may think what's best for us. But I dare to choose that this is what I'm going to do, and I don't know perhaps where it's going to lead me. I know really what the end goal is, but I'm going to focus on that. That's not easy. But as the Prophet ﷺ said, طُوبَى لِلْغُرَبَى, glad tidings to the strange ones. Because Islam came as something strange and a return is something strange, so glad tidings to the strangers. We have to accept that we're not going to always fit in. That is a sunnah, that is a reoccurring thing that has happened all throughout prophecy. Not just the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, all prophets were countercultural in a certain extent. Not trying to be, but by focusing on what was important to them, it led them to being outcasts at certain points. And so we have to accept that by us sometimes figuring out and identifying what we're going to do, other people may not understand. Other people may not be able to relate to what it is. But sometimes we're daring to go out there. Once we've committed and clarified what we're going to do, and we're just really being courageous and daring to figure out what it is we're going to do, that means we're going to uncommit to everything else. Perhaps I figured out what I'm going to do, but I have all these extra things that I committed to before that. So I said I was going to, I don't know, give this halaqa. But also I said I was going to give another class, and I'm going to attend college, and I'm going to do all these different things that are going to infringe on my most important thing, which is giving this halaqa. This is all a hypothetical. So now I have to uncommit to those things. You know what? I really can't do that anymore. Because I said what's most important to me is this, giving the halaqa. So because this secondary thing or this third thing is not really what I'm passionate about, it's not really what I'm committed to, I can't do that anymore. And so uncommitting to those other things is very, very important. Again, that also we can do that on a spiritual level. Spiritually, we may think that we're going to get into Jannah by every single door. I'm going to pray all night long. I'm going to give every ounce of dollar that I have to sadaqah. I'm going to exhaust myself physically to make sure that I am the biggest servant in the masjid. Maybe that's not really what's going to happen. That I'm good at doing this one thing. This is what's easy for me, and this is what I'm passionate about. So I may have to say I'm not going to do these other things. By uncommitting to the other things doesn't mean that I remain stagnant with this thing that I'm committed to. No, I'm uncommitting so that I can put my efforts back on that most important thing. We can't think that I'm eliminating these things so I have more time to do nothing. No, 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 it has to be intentional. Then we have to edit. After we've uncommitted, we have to edit what's going on. How and what am I going to do? How is it important? How is it going to help me? Perhaps I need to pivot. And this is an integral part of life in general, particularly for people who are younger. Maybe we said our passion was this, but something comes and sort of redirects us. Something comes, and while it's on the same commitment, it becomes something different. I've told my life story time and time again up here. I went to Saudi to study at al-Qura to get a PhD in Qada, the hardest school there in law. One of my friends told me year one, you are never doing that, bro. That is not you. I was like, yo, you hate me. Stop. A few years in, I realized it's not going to be that. But I'm here. This is what I committed myself to, studying Islam. So I had to make a pivot. I went from the College of Sharia to the College of Da'wah. From the College of Jurisprudence to then the College of the College of Usul ad-Din, the foundations of religion. That was good. But then I have to come back to America. And I really didn't see myself getting a PhD any longer. So I had to pivot. I love mental health. I love pastoral care. I love this. So now we're going to pivot and focus on that. And as each things come up in life, we have to be open and be malleable, if you will. We have to be vulnerable so that when these things come up, we're not so rigid that it breaks us. Maybe I thought that I was going to do one thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed that that wasn't going to be the thing. By having that initial goal, it gives us momentum. When it comes time that we need to edit, we need to refocus, we need to pivot, we do that. But we then don't despair. The last point, we have to limit it. We can't think, okay, I hit this roadblock, so again I go back to thinking when I have FOMO, I have all these opportunities, all these options. No, we have to remain limited. So maybe, again, in a spiritual realm, I thought that I was going to be able to pray Qiyam every single night. Every single night, I've committed myself to praying Qiyam, but then I get sick. So physically, getting up at nighttime is very, very difficult. Or something happens, I have exams that come up, or work, I have a project that I'm on. I have a newborn child. Something happens, and what I used to do, I can no longer do. What do we do? What measures do we take? With Qiyam, I didn't say, khalas, I'm going to pray Shafa' and Witr. I'm going to pray 3 rak'ah before going to sleep so that I have done some night prayer and I'm going to focus on these new things that I'm focusing on? Or do I give up on it altogether and say, I have no clue what I'm supposed to do? La ta'asu min rawhillah. We can't despair in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have the ability, as I started off with, to achieve greatness. It's only through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as the Prophet ﷺ said, inshallah, the premise of this entire halaqa tonight, we have to figure out what is beneficial to us. Ihris ala ma yanfa'ak. Be diligent in what's going to be beneficial to you. Wasta'in billah. Seek God's aid simultaneously. Once you figure out what it is and you're being diligent, understanding that doesn't happen except through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wala ta'jaz, and don't tire. Don't tire and don't make excuses. Realize that this is all through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's decree. What can I do now with this to make the best out of it? It may not be the one I want the most. It may not be what I think is easiest for me, but how do I edit? How do I refocus my attention on that thing to make it good? Wallahu a'lam. I open the floor to questions, comments, critiques, and concerns so that we can use the rest of this time to make it somewhat interactive, inshallah. Does anyone have any? Because I have prepared questions. I have no problem asking you all questions. Fadl Amr. Absolutely. Absolutely. Jazakallah khair, barakallah feek. I think you mentioned a couple key points that require some deep thought about. And I agree. If you love what you do, as they say, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And again, that's really going back to the core principle of figuring out what that is. I think I'm facing the wrong way. Okay, doesn't work. Whatever. But going back to figuring out what the essence is. And that can be applied, this isn't just, I just mentioned like secular, I kept it very general for important, like on purpose, because it can be applied to many different things. Whether it's choosing friends, whether it's what it's important at work. By figuring out what that is, then that's how you can start to do this. But it requires some intentionality, it requires some reflect on that. And then you mentioned having good companions. Absolutely. Al-mu'minu ala dini khalili, as the Prophet ﷺ said, the believer is upon the religion of his close companion and friend. Our companions and our social surroundings are going to have a big impact on what we're doing. And this is on a spiritual level as well. I mean, if we are constantly, I forgot again what this term is, but if we're constantly seeing certain things, then it will affect how we interpret other things. Just like as when we see a car or we buy a car. Before that, perhaps we didn't see that car everywhere, but then all of a sudden I start seeing this frequency, this car everywhere. There's actual phenomenon, I forget what it's called. That is very, very real also on a spiritual level. If I'm always orienting myself to see beauty in the creation, if I'm always around people who are talking about beauty, that are talking about good things, then I will start to be oriented in that way. Everything that I see, I look through the lens of beauty. I'm inclined to these beautiful things. I'm inclined to do things that are pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to take the effort to do that. So yeah, jazakallah khair. I think this also applies to everyone. This isn't something that we do as young professionals, then khalas, it's done, or young people and it's done. I think it has to happen all the way through life. That we're constantly reevaluating. We're constantly doing some muhasabah. As to what we're doing, what we're trying to do, and where we're trying to go with it. Because by doing it again, by constantly reevaluating that, that allows us to fine-tune. That allows us to pivot in a more intentional way. When things, we usually start off with big, vague things, we're trying to fine-tune that. And once we do fine-tune that, we'll start to make more nuance. Things will allow it. Yeah, go ahead. Jazakallah khair, Muhammad. Jazakallah khair, wallahi, that's a very, very good question that, quite frankly, I forgot about certain contexts of things. I live sort of like a 50-year-old man, so like while I'm on social media, I don't share much of anything personal on social media. And that's very, very real, so thank you for sharing that. One, I think we should only be sharing, it's from our religion, that we share things with those who love us and have the best intentions for us. When I say that you're sharing these things, I'm talking about people that are going to motivate you, people that are going to want good for you, not people that by you sharing that, then they have hasad, they have envy, or they're jealous of you and they want that. That's not the goal. The goal is that the purpose of me mentioning that was that you have some impact, some motivation, or some guidance in that. By sharing this, I want to go to the gym. Maybe you know a friend that's a trainer, and they're going to help you with that. Now, this hyper sharing, this culture of hyper sharing, everything, Snapchat, Instagram, live, this is what I'm doing right now, I think that's detrimental, and that's to the same point that you were mentioning. By doing that, then now everything loses purpose. Everything then loses the goodness that it once had. And I think we have to be critical of ourselves and why we're doing that, because not only is it going to affect us because we have achieved the goals that we wanted that you mentioned, but also I would like to challenge in what's the intention behind doing that. Because, wallahu alam, and Allah knows best, I think that whether to our knowledge or unbeknownst to us, there's some sort of arrogance underlined in that. I'm showing off by doing this. Because we all curate our lives on social media to be this one thing. You look at couples and they are oh so beautiful, so cute in France and Paris. They're in these different places and they look so nice, they're smiling. Those same couples, they come for marriage counseling. Like they're on the verge of divorce. And I'm not saying that like that's the reality. We all have difficulties in life. But we curate our lives so that we only show the good. Why? I'm not judging anyone. I'm saying we need to ask ourselves, why are we sharing? Is it because I want other people to feel good, but I need some now external gratification from others so that I feel good about myself? And that's a problem because I need to figure out how to feel good about myself without having that. And then spiritually, am I doing it because I want them to feel good about me and it's really supposed to be doing for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Am I going to the gym so I take care of my body or that I look good? That's fine too. Or am I doing it so everyone can say, yeah, look how much I lift in the gym or how often I go? And that's a big difference that is very, very nuanced, that it requires, again, some intentionality and some thoughtfulness. It requires really focusing on what we're doing. And which is why we have to escape sometimes, which is why we have to really take a step back and ask ourselves these important questions that may hurt the outcomes. Trying to come to the purpose and why we're doing is not always easy. Because the purpose of spirituality is to achieve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure, right? And if we're trying to achieve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure, that means I have to be real with myself so I can understand what Allah, the real, wants from me. And so by doing that, it means I have to look in the mirror. I really have to just say, who is Abdul-Malik right now? I had that sin, I did that, that's not good. I have this strength, but I'm lazy over here. What am I doing? And that's not always easy, but that's something worth the time and effort. And I would challenge us to say that it's a very, not just worth, it's a very big part of things. We need to be doing that muhasabah, holding ourselves to account, hopefully getting to a extent of muraqabah, where we're constantly doing this throughout our actions. No sisters? Okay. Yes. Mm. Mm. Mm-hmm. 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 So I'm hearing two things to clarify. I just want to sort of reflect and you tell me if, one, it's the social pressure that if I don't do this, I'm a bad person. And then how do I focus on me when I'm trying to figure out these things? Okay. The first part, being a bad person, this social pressure that we feel that we have, if we say no, then we're going to let someone down, is very, very real. But it goes back to understanding why and what we're doing. What's the purpose? Like, for example, if you're in school or you're working and you have this project you need to finish. If your friends are saying, let's go to JP Licks and get some ice cream, but you really need to focus on this project right now, it may be hard to tell them no. But if you're principled, you've figured out what your passion is and what's of a primal importance to you, then it becomes a bit easier. You can actually tell them, hey, you can communicate that. Listen, y'all, I really would love to come with y'all, but this is important right now. So that goes back to being principled, figuring out what we're doing, what it is we're trying to accomplish, and then communicating that. And that doesn't make you a bad person. That requires just some communication. The second thing is when is more about the prioritization of those things. When you figure out what it is, then you have to prioritize how important this is in my life. For example, me personally, I am married with children, I work here at the ISPC, and I'm in school, right? My family, there's nothing more important to me than my family. Nothing. But I work at the masjid like a lot. And so then how do I balance and negotiate that? It's making sure that my wife and kids are getting very purposeful time, while at the same time spending time here. Now, there are times that I just have to say, hey, I have to spend time with my family because they need, my wife is sick, for example. She needs me there. She's going through my children, my son has a parent-teacher conference. I need to be there for that. And so at those times, I already have my priorities in check where family's number one. Then school. I love academia. It's so much fun for me. But ISBCC is far more important to me. I care about you guys, the community, far more than my personal interest in academia. So if there ever comes a time where I need to get the Halaqa done, or I need to do something for the community, and I have school project over here, I should have prioritized my time from the beginning of the semester to make sure I'm getting and notching it away. But more importantly, I figured out right now, I may not be able to read all this stuff for school. My graduate experience is not going to be like everyone's, where they sit back all day and they read all the reading material, the required readings, and I'm just going to write the papers and get an A that way. May not be exactly what I wanted, but again, I've prioritized that. And so by prioritizing those things, it helps the first part of your question, and now dealing with other people and saying, I'm not going to be able to come right now. And I would hope, inshallah, that you have friends that if you can give them a principled, a genuine, nice answer, they would understand that. If they don't, that requires another set of reevaluating what the quality of those friends are. Because if you tell them, I'm about this right here, and they're saying, no, we want you to come chill, even though that's a priority to you, what kind of friends are those? And so that can be used as a good rubric to figure out what that is. If you have figured out that you're principled, you understand what your purpose is, what you're trying to do, and you communicate that and they don't, then now you can reevaluate that. Because your friends, no matter where they are, they may not have the same passions, they may not understand what you're doing, but because it's important to you, they should be motivators in helping you for that. I told one of my friends, I want to write a book. I have no time to write a book, but it's like, yo, bro, I want to write this book. He's like, I'm going to be the first person to buy it. He doesn't care nothing about writing a book. He probably hasn't read a book in a long time. But he was like, yo, I'm buying your book. You better write that book. And he keeps telling me, when you write a book, when you write a book. I'm like, bro, I just told you it's an idea. Like, I'm thinking about it. He's like, no, you need to write the book. That's a friend. That's someone who really cares about you. Wallahu a'lam. No, there's some youngers back there. Some youngers back there. Very real. No, not at all. That doesn't stop with high school, by the way. That continues on through life. Muhammad Khafif, sitting right next to you, is a businessman. I'm sure they're in the business world. There are things he shouldn't be doing, those good opportunities that happen at a bar. Wallahi, it doesn't stop. But I say that to say, one, on a personal tip, if you want to talk about that, me and you offline, we can do that. I'm here for you, inshallah. Two, it's not easy, man. Wallahi, it's not easy. And it doesn't, the goal is that we can get used to doing it, it becomes easier. But especially when you're in high school and bombarded with everything else. But I think that's when it's even more important to really figuring out what is meaningful. A way that I find beneficial is looking at the lives of other people and what they had to go through to achieve what they've gone through. So those people that we think are successful, or they have something that we envy, or we, not envy, but we admire, looking at how they were and what they gave up to do that. Whether it's Steve Jobs or it's LeBron James. How LeBron spends $1 million a year in physical training. Not $1 million a year to have constant physical training. On season, 7 days a week. Off season, 5 days a week. That's real commitment that I'm sure is shunned upon by a lot of other people. He also is a very committed family man. So again, I'm just bringing LeBron James because he's in the media all the time. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar just wrote an article about him. But it's very, very real that we're going to have pressures that are trying to get us to do things that we have to figure out and balance what is most important. And whether that's on a big picture like at school or just internally, I want to do something that isn't good for me. So what is important? For you, it could be playing football or getting like an A in school. Very real choice, right? May Allah bless you, man. Make it easy. May Allah make it easy. 1 second, see if there's a sister. No sisters. All right, Muhammad. No. Absolutely. His entire life. I mean, the man memorized the dictionary. There's a lot of other things you can do in prison besides memorizing the dictionary. He came out and said, I mean, every part of his life. May Allah be pleased with him. Again, absolutely, Jazakallah khair for your courage, and it is something that is very real, that always exists, that temptations and peer pressure will always be there. You, alhamdulillah, have me, you have Sheikh Yasser, you have your community here to help support you, you have your father who's amazing, and you have to build that support structure for yourself. No one's gonna build it for you. We're gonna try. I'm gonna keep telling you, hey Zayd, what's up, bro, what's up, what's up? At the end of the day, if you don't want it, I can't be in your life, you know what I'm saying? You have to build that so that when things are difficult, you can pull me and say, hey man, I need you right now. You can pull those good friends. If you don't do that, then it's even more difficult. If you don't have that structure. So we have to build a foundation, a structure for ourselves to actually stand upon. Wallahu a'lam. May Allah make it easy. Thanks, sir. Welcome, welcome. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Allahu Akbar. May Allah grant us assistance. Mm-hmm. 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 Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm-hmm. That's a very good question, Jazakallah khair. And welcome to the community. I hope one of the brothers tonight will take you to the cafe and get something to drink, inshallah. Um, so you asked two things. One, when do we shift or change directions? And then you had more of a comment at the beginning as to when you fail and get back up. And we tend to be, particularly in today's age, focused on the end result. But spiritually, it's not really about the end results. It's about the goal, achieving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure. But the results, whether I actually get that or not, or excuse me, whether it materializes in a way that I actually can see it is not the point. The point is that I keep struggling. Maybe I will always be a sinner. I will never achieve a state of always praying. I'm going to keep working to that, but perhaps I'll keep falling, keep making mistakes. The point is that I keep pushing, that even when I do fall, I repent and I get back up. And this is like the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ said that someone will commit a sin and repent, and commit it, and Allah will forgive them. They'll commit a sin and repent, and Allah will forgive them. And they'll keep doing this to the point where Allah will say, I forgive them for everything they do. That sincerity and that commitment to the struggle is what it's about. Not always seeing, because sometimes we'll get upset as, why isn't this materialized that I'm not this or I'm not that? It's really about the effort and the journey, not necessarily the end destination. Because the end destination is judged by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not by our own subjectivity, not by what we see in our material realm. Now, about when do we transition? That's different for every single person. Every person is going to have a different threshold. But the goal, in my opinion, is that we put actually some metrics there of success. First and foremost, do I actually enjoy this thing? Is it something that I'm passionate about? Then after, am I passionate about it? Is it something I actually have the ability to work toward? So now I've put some metrics. It's something I'm passionate about. Do I have the ability to achieve, or to even work in that area? Once I do that, I've actually taken practical steps to get about something. Now maybe I need to network more. Maybe I need to do other things. That's, again, a different question. Now if we've put those metrics there and we hit a a brick wall, that may require, again, some muhasabah, saying, listen, I've exhausted all means. If we've exhausted all means, that may mean that we do something else. If it was written for us, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed that for us, perhaps we'll learn it. But again, going back to the first thing I mentioned, it's about the journey, about all the experiences we learned in that. I've publicly shared that I got divorced. I was married young and I got divorced. Now I could have easily said, A'udhu billah, I'm divorced. I could have blamed her, and you did this and you did, that's not helpful. What was helpful for me to say, what did I do? What part of that did I play? And what am I going to do to change to be a better person? Now I had to pivot, obviously. I got remarried, alhamdulillah. But the experiences that I learned in the first journey helped me now be a better man today. It helped me be a better father to my other children. And so that is, again, it's not about what materializes from it, but what we learn in the process. And if we've had a principled approach to things in the beginning, then inshallah we won't have to make too many transitions. But if we do, our outlook should be one in which where we can see the goodness in that. We understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees all things. We understand that in that there is something Allah wanted us to go through. So we just try to find that. Wallahu a'lam. May Allah make it easy. But also mentorship, as the uncle mentioned in the beginning. Inshallah, we have people in our lives that are going to sort of point out, like, hey man, this ain't for you. You need to shift. We have those people in our lives that are going to help us along that journey so that we can become aware and make a shift. Wow. Works out. MashaAllah. I'm so sorry. Yeah, absolutely. 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 MashaAllah. First, I'm so sorry for the loss of your brother. May Allah make it easy for you and your family. I'm so sorry. Second, how do you find, or how do you, it's difficult when it's coming directly from your family. Absolutely. This is something the Prophet ﷺ himself experienced. He was being tormented by, first and foremost, in the very beginning, by his close family, his uncle. His uncle literally cussed him out in front of everyone. And so it's not easy, but it's also not something new. So how that can become easier, I don't have an exact answer for you, because alhamdulillah, my family is accepting of me being Muslim, those who aren't Muslim. So I'm not going to even try to pontificate or try to make up something to give you an answer. But I would suggest reading the life of the Prophet ﷺ, particularly in the very, very beginning, his seerah and how and what he went through, to have some connection, to understand that you're not alone in this spiritually nor realistically. Also, being with other Muslims, like you mentioned, that have gone through it as well, that it may be difficult for, to have some companionship in that. That doesn't necessarily make the load easier or lighter, but at least there's some camaraderie, some fraternity in that. And the last part is, how do we balance between our culture, our background, and Islam? Islam is not meant to be something foreign. While it may seem that way, especially in the very beginning, that's not the goal. And Islam, you'll find worldwide, has been so, what's the word I'm looking for? Not malleable, but it's based on principles that different cultures have adapted different interpretations of the religion. Not to say the religion has changed, but their cultural expression of the religion has changed. So Islam in Indonesia versus Islam in Pakistan, India, versus Islam in Saudi Arabia, versus Islam in North Africa versus West Africa versus East Africa versus South Africa, Central versus South Africa versus Europe versus America, North and South, all have very, very different interpretations. And so your challenge is going to be, how do you find Islam in your Dominican heritage? And how you can still connect to that. How you do that, again, I don't have a rubric for that. But the principles shouldn't change you. Meaning you should still be a good son. You try your absolute best to be a good son. You understand and respecting of parents is still primal. That family is still there, though I'm not going to eat pork, and maybe I'm not going to indulge in drinking alcohol, per se. And so while you're changing some big things, because I know culturally it's drinking and the dancing and all that stuff, still trying to find meaning, so negotiating those situations. I remember much, much early on in my life, my mom was negotiating different holidays. Hey, can we not do it on Christmas? Let's do it a day before, a day after. Let's just have a dinner that's not religious. Everyone's getting together or something like that. That was a negotiation my mother had. And so trying to be creative to create those things. Again, Islam is not made to alienate you. While that could happen due to human ignorance, whether we don't know the proper interpretation of how to interact with this, or they may not have been exposed to the beautiful Islam that you're trying to show them, so initially it makes that. But the goal is that we can try to find some harmony and some resonance with that. Allah knows best. And again, as I told Zaid, I'm here if you ever want to talk off-site, but definitely getting in touch with the other Latino Muslims in the community, though they're small in number, but so to figure out how they did it, because they'll be able to resonate, they'll be able to relate best, and then other people have converted, reverted, whichever word you like best. If there are no more questions, inshallah, we'll close here. Jazakumullah khair, everyone who engaged. Thank you so much. Anything I said was correct was from Allah and Allah alone. Anything I said was incorrect from myself and shaitan. I do recommend this book if you'd like to get it. But we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us people of deep intention. We ask Allah to make us people who understand what our purpose is and are forbearant and intentional about achieving it. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to never make our own weakness a means of distracting us from our intentions and from our purpose. And we ask Him to give us the strength to persevere and have the fortitude to achieve that purpose. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put people in our lives that will aid us in our path and make us strong and support us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the strength to whether it be alone or push away those who are negative influences on us. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that through whatever intention we may have, we are trying to achieve His pleasure, and we do that. Ya Allah, Ya Kareem, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam ajma'in. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.